Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the United States of America. We have a lot of interesting details and statements. Donald Trump stated that Russia has about 800 or 900,000 dead or wounded soldiers. Ukraine has about 700,000 wounded or dead. So most likely Donald Trump is playing with numbers, obviously, and the main purpose is to force both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, to begin the negotiation process. Another important statement about Donald Trump, that he expects to hold a meeting with Zelensky next week, which could take place in Washington, the White House reported. The US president also noted that he maintains his intention to talk with Putin, adding that this conflict must be ended. In addition, the American leader said that he does not plan to send US troops to Gaza. Securing in the sector will be provided by Israel. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Europe. We have a lot of very interesting statements and details, and first let's talk about Ukraine. Zelensky continued playing with his resources. Zelensky said that he does not intend to give Ukraine's minerals resources to Trump or other Western countries, partners. The only option is to develop them jointly in close partnership. Zelensky most likely realized the price, and he realized that most likely when Western countries are interested in his resources, at least he managed to understand this when Donald Trump revealed his let's say private or maybe his national interest of the United States of America. So now Zelensky is trying to get as much as possible from this situation. Furthermore, we have reported Ukraine has all necessary conditions for at least 30 nuclear weapons to end it up in its hands. Former Foreign Minister Vladimir Andriivka said that this is in an interview with Ukraine media. If Trump raises the issues of wanting to end the war at any cost, that is at the expense of Ukraine, such as peace does not suit us. As for nuclear weapons, we have all the necessary conditions for at least 30 nuclear weapons to end up in Ukraine's hands. This is not very good and smart idea, obviously, and nobody will allow the Ukrainians to use this or to have it, obviously. Another important thing that young people aged 18-24 will be recruited into the army. A special contract is being prepared for them, which will be launched next week. That was stated by Zelensky. This will not be mobilization but voluntary enlistment in the army. The contracts will provide for many benefits and high financial security, and the term will be 1 year. So this is very important. This is another trap that Ukrainians are trying to force young Ukrainians to get in. So what is the main thing? Now Zelensky understands that he can't start mobilization process among 18-24 aged. Now he needs to create a gap. He needs to create a buffer. He needs to create a small society of these young people who will join army, and he wants these people to stay at homes in their own towns, in their own cities, and he wants to set a precedent. He wants to have an example in every single town that take a look at these guys. They earn a lot of money, they have a good job, they are not on the line of combat contact, they're among you, they are trained by Ukrainian government and so on. And he wants to make people to wish this job. But obviously when contract ends in 1 year, most likely all these soldiers, all these prepared people would be sent to the line of combat contact. So as for now, he just tried to play with this. He just tried to place on the financial matter with the purpose to collect as many as possible and to create the back gap and to show people that there is nothing, let's say, strange, nothing to worry about. You can join Ukraine army and everything will be okay. So which means that Zelensky also plans to continue a war with Russia. Now let's discuss the situation in the ground, and first we're going to talk about the Sudzha direction, where the Ukrainians continue their offensive operation. We got several geolocations during the previous 24 hours, some adjustments on map. Let's take a look at how the map has been changed for the previous day. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 7th of February of 2025. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, managed to answer the settlement of Andriivka. We had some reports from different sources that the village of Cherkasska Konopelka was captured by the Ukrainians, and we got reports that Ukrainians managed to take under control this tree line. And today, by the morning of the 8th of February, we got some confirmations. For example, based on the geolocation video that was published by the Russian side, we have adjusted the map, the tree line between the settlement of Ulanok and Andriivka, which means that the report that we got yesterday was correct. In this video, for example, we can see how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian units exactly in this point. Based on this video, we have adjusted this small part. Furthermore, we received lots of videos from the area of Cherkasskaya Konopelka. The Ukrainians, according to at least 3 or 4 geolocations, were trying to attack the Russian positions along this road. This attack was repelled. The Ukrainians were trying to enter the settlement using these roads of attack, and several Ukrainian groups, troopers, managed to enter the settlement from this side, but they were destroyed. So let's take a look at the video. In this video, we can see Ukrainian tank that took its position and maybe was trying to attack the Ukrainians. The Russians, we see Ukrainian soldier that was running away trying to escape, and we see Russian drone attack the tank, and the tank was destroyed. This is another video, and in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were moving in the direction of Cherkasskaya Konopelka. Another Russian drone stopped Ukrainian advance. And in this video that we will not open, we can see a structure, this building, and completely filled with Ukrainian dead soldiers that most likely were ambushed and destroyed by the Russian artillery strike or FPV drone strikes. So, which means that we still haven't received even a single geolocation that can confirm Ukrainian presence in the central part, despite the fact that a lot of sources already reported that the village was captured. For example, very reliable pro-Russian resources confirmed that indeed the settlement of Cherkasskaya Konopelka was completely captured and secured by the Ukrainians, but the situation for them is very difficult, and most likely they would be forced to fall back. Today we got, starting this morning, we got a lot of reports that Ukrainians continue or began redeploying additional forces in the area of Sudzha, and the main interesting thing is that some sources were moved in the direction, were redeployed in the direction of Makhnovka and Kalmakov. So the Ukrainians continue the concentration of forces in this line, and also the same source reported that Ukrainians were redeploying their forces in the direction of Malaya Loknya. So this is the second area of Ukrainian concentration of forces. When talking about the first, the direction, everything is clear and understandable. The Ukrainians need to continue their offensive. They need to clear Cherkasskaya Konopelka and then to move further in the direction of Plokhova. So most likely today or tomorrow the Ukrainians will continue their offensive operation. But as for the settlement of Malaya Loknya, as for now it's very difficult to understand what exactly the Ukrainians are planning to do. There are several options. Either the Ukrainians are waiting for another Russian attempt to attack, or the Ukrainians are going to counterattack as well, with the purpose to force the Russians to fall back from this settlement and just to create another buffer zone and to secure the Sudzha direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the northern Kupiansk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. We see that the Russians are not going to, let's say, to start any operational pause. They continue their offensive. We start receiving updates from the area of Kindrashevka. The Russian sources published the video how they were FPV droning and attacking the Ukrainian vehicles in this area, and this is something like a cleanup operation with the purpose to prepare the foothold before further offensive operation. I can't say exactly when exactly the Russians are going to begin this offensive, but maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks, and they will try to enter the settlement of Kivsharovka that located along R79 road. Another important update is coming from the northern part of Dvorichna. Today, according to neutral mappers, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their positions and to take several fields, strongholds, former strongholds of the armed force Ukraine, under complete control. So as for this, we can see the Russians are moving in the direction of the next settlement, like Dovchenke and Putnikova. So the Russians continue, and we see that they're getting deeper and deeper inside of the area between two defense lines. Now let's move further. We have interesting details from the Liman direction. Today the Russians continue their offensive operation, and the sources reported that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to enter the northern part of Yampolovka, basically to break through the Ukrainian defense belt. The Ukrainians published the video. We will not watch this, we will not play this video due to casualties and losses, but this video video shows us that the presence of Russian forces and how the Ukrainians were drawn them. Pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed this information, but they showed just the progress in the forest, and they colored the northern part of Yampolovka as a contested area or the gray zone. So this is the only difference. The Russians continue their advancing, and most likely very soon we're going to see the first battle for the settlement of Tarskoe, and most likely during the next month or two the Ukrainians will lose their foothold on the Russian side of the river of Zheribets. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the city of Chasiv Yar. The Russians continue their offensive operation, and today pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Russians indeed managed to cross the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal to the south of the city of Chasiv Yar and to improve their positions in the direction of the settlement of Stupochki. As for the city of Toretsk, I'll remind you that yesterday the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation confirmed that the settlement, the city of Toretsk, was completely captured by the Russians. Later, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation gave us some interesting numbers regarding the battle for this stronghold. The Russians reported that the battle for the city of Toretsk took place around 5 months. Also, the Russians reported that Ukrainians had around 40,000 contingent in this area with the purpose to stop the Russian advance, and according to the Russians, the Ukrainians lost up to 70%, so around 26,000 people during the battle for this area. So significant losses. Now the Russians are able and ready to move further in the direction of Konstantinovka. As for the Pokrovsk direction, we have small adjustments on map in the area of Peshchane. Indeed, we have another confirmation that indeed several days ago the Ukrainians carried out several counterattacks in this area, and as a result of those counterattacks, the Ukrainians most likely managed to enter the territory of mine. In this video, we can see a vehicle abandoned by the armed forces of Ukraine that the Russians can't evacuate, which means that most likely the Russians don't have access to this area when talking about soldiers and troopers. So that's why the Russians destroyed and attacked this vehicle with FPV drone. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map and we have colored at least this hangar and several constructions in this area in Ukrainian favor. Now let's discuss the situation in Andriivka fortified area. The situation for the Ukrainians is very critical. Basically, this direction collapses. And the most important updates are coming from the area of Andriivka. Today, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, which is very important, the Russians managed to continue their offensive operation, managed to break through the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine in the central part of the settlement, and basically the Russians established complete control over the only road at T0515 between the settlement of Constantinople and the settlement of Andriivka itself. So basically, the northern evacuation road was cut by the Russians, was taken by the Russians physically. Now the Ukrainians have only way for evacuation is N15 road further in the western direction. You know, the dynamic in this area is very, very interesting. Let's take a look at the situation. The Russian offensive, the Russian final offensive started somewhere on the 4th of February. So this is the day, this is the turning point in the battle for Andriivka fortified area when everything started developing in Russian favor. So this is the situation by the end of the 5th of February. According to different sources, the Russians established complete control over the eastern part of the settlement. Later, by the end of the 6th of February, we got first reports that the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense and to reach the southern outskirts of the settlement, basically cutting the settlement in two. On the 7th of February, the Russians mainly were, focused on developing their positions. They were trying to maintain the lines to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area, to take under control territories between different islands of Russian, resistance. And by the beginning of the 8th of February, the Russians managed to break through their Ukraine defense direction in the western direction and to cut the road physically. So this is very important because this road was taken. Ukrainians, if they decide to evacuate their troopers from Ulanok in Constantinople and then in the direction of Andriivka, as for now they don't have this possibility anymore. But now we understand that the Russians need to do just one thing. The Russians need to begin another offensive operation in the direction of Rozliv and to take this road under complete control. And we believe and we expect that this is exactly what the Russians are going to do during the next 2-3 days. If the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, are able to take under control the settlement of Rozliv and to take under control or physical control over the road N15, this is going to be a complete disaster for the armed forces of Ukraine on the line Constantinople-Ulanok and the pockets between Dachny and Ulanok. This will mean taking into encirclement, cutting into encirclement probably several thousand of Ukrainian forces. This is going to be a disaster, and this can lead to a complete collapse of Ukrainian defense, and the Russians will continue advance further in Bogatyr and Alexeyevka directions. The situation for the Ukrainians here is very critical, and this is not a joke. Ukrainian sources from their side published photo. They attacked the command headquarters of the armed force of Russian Federation in the Pokrovsk direction in the city of Selidova. The city was the building was completely destroyed as a result of most likely some US-made missile or bomb or something like this. And that's it for the short video. Military summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.